Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Anna and I am trying to get back into making my full-length YouTube videos because I am getting more confident in my doll customs. So for today's video I am making a lamb doll, and I know like lamb dolls or like anthropomorphized dolls in general are like pretty common, but like I don't know, something in me was just kind of screaming make a lamb doll. I had like a design in mind, and so I got this beautiful G1 Clawdeen off eBay and she is super pretty. I just love this brown hair on Clawdeen, and this is actually my first like G1 Clawdeen doll ever, and she's so gorgeous. I'm just like obsessed with her, like her face sculpting, and so I just really wanted to use this doll. So I'm taking off her original ears and I'm just kind of slicing them off with a X-Acto knife, and it's actually kind of a satisfying process. I don't know what that says about me, but it's pretty fun. So then I was going to reroot her like where her ears were missing. So I went ahead and took off her head without like getting the holes wet. I just covered her with a plastic bag. But once I started playing around with it, it looked like her hair would be enough to cover the holes, and I am grooming her hair into a ponytail. So even in a ponytail, her hair was enough to cover the holes, and so I just decided to save the hair that I had bought for later. For this custom, I started with the outfit because I'm doing body modifications to her feet and hands to make hooves, and so I knew getting the outfit on and off after that would just be impossible. So I cut apart a G1 Draculaura dress, which I feel like is blasphemy because it's one of my favorite G1 Draculaura dresses, and I cut out a layer of silk and lace and then just sewed it together to make this cute lace crop top. And then for the skirt, I'm just doing like a couple layers of mesh to make like a tulle petticoat, and it's a little bit see-through, so I made her this cute pair of boy shorts. The petticoat is going to go underneath a doily skirt, which I'll be making later. And I like to just finish my garments straight onto the doll. It kind of sucks not having any closures, but I feel like having snaps or Velcro onto the doll's clothing just adds extra bulk, and this just helps the finish be a little bit nicer. I also crocheted her a basket by starting out with the first round of a basic granny square and then building about 5 rows of single crochets on top of that. Once it's done, I just turn it inside out and weave in my ends and add a chain for her handle. I like to use crochet in my doll projects because I know how to crochet, and I think crocheting just gives unique touches to the garments and accessories for the doll that like sewing and other crafting abilities wouldn't be able to do. I had some extra decoration by going ahead and sewing a cute little trim around the rim just to make it look a little bit cuter and more girly. For some extra padding inside the basket, I go ahead and make this picnic cloth out of some red gingham fabric that I have. I'm planning on making some clay strawberries to go inside the basket, so this will just help hold it in and just have the strawberries sit on top and look super cute. Now for the body modifications. This was my first time ever using Apoxie Sculpt, and so I'm not gonna act like 100% that I know what I'm doing, but yeah, it was less intimidating than I thought it would be. It's very sticky. It's not really like regular clay. It's just kind of like not as fluid to move because it does have the epoxy in it. So I went ahead and sculpted this first hoof, and I wanted to let that cure before I moved on to the second one so that there was no, like, they weren't sticking together because I had wrapped up the rest of the doll to keep it from getting on her clothing. So yeah, the second hoof turned out a little bit better than the first hoof, but I think they both look pretty okay. And so once those were done, I went ahead and twisted some jewelry wire for an armature and went ahead and just wrapped some clay around that wire to make hands in the similar way. And I just repeat that same process with the ears. I go ahead and pierce her head where I want the ears to be, and then I just go ahead and start painting. It doesn't quite matter that everything isn't perfectly smooth. I definitely didn't sand the epoxy sculpt or anything like that, because later on I'm going to cover it in yarn scraps to create wool, and I just go ahead and glue in those hands right where the normal doll's hands would normally be. Sadly, this means she won't have like articulation in her wrist, but it's fine. I go ahead and take some more Apoxie Sculpt and just sort of lightly blend that into the rest of the arm so that it looks natural and there's not just like this obvious gap in between her arms. I stick in the ears where I want them to be, and then later on I add some more Apoxie Sculpt to help them lay a little bit flatter to her ears. I also take some clay and make some strawberries for her basket. To make the wool, I'm using this yarn scrap from a crochet project that I messed up on. I wasn't able to undo it or tie it because I already tied it off. So I just go ahead and cut it up to make scraps to make the wool. And it's really nice that it was already crocheted because it just creates this like fluffy texture rather than just having like taking the yarn off the skein and brushed it. Unfortunately, Fabri-Tac didn't seem strong enough to hold this yarn to the Apoxie Sculpt. I'm not really sure why. So I eventually opted for a hot glue gun, which was a much better bonding agent. And I just sort of laid thicker chunks on the bottom parts of her legs and then faded it up to blend in with her skin, and repeated a similar process with her arms. Once everything's done and there's no more mess with glue or yarn scraps, I go ahead and sew on her petticoat and begin crocheting her doily skirt. It was obvious that crocheting the skirt right onto the doll was going to be, too difficult, so I opted to just stick a stitch marker into the first and last stitch of the chain and just sort of stitch on the round, but not really. Like, once I got to the end of the row, I just flipped it and then stitched across like you would do for like a rectangular crochet, but it's still kind of like on the round stitch, and so it's able to build up the skirt properly. For this doily skirt, I'm very loosely following an Irish doily pattern by Handmade by Rain here on YouTube. I'm definitely going to leave her link in the description if you know how to crochet, and also to just credit her as the designer, because like I definitely modified this to make it easier to crochet and also to fit a little bit better on the doll. But if you know how to crochet and want to replicate something like this, definitely check out her original pattern. I realized a little too late that it maybe would have been smarter to wait to put in the ears. I ended up having to take them off when I put the head back on the body, but I made do. I put on blush first, and it looks a little stark here on this first layer, but as we add, more color to the face, and as we add up more layers of MSC, it definitely will blend in a little bit better and look a little softer. So I go ahead and place some dark shadows along the eyes. I kind of wanted a little bit of like a cut crease lid. I don't know if it's like that's the right term, but I also added some orange, like bronzy colors into the eyes. I just really wanted like soft peach and pink tones, and also like red lips. I just really wanted to have like a nice flowery, strawberry inspired makeup look, and so that's kind of sort of what I started doing. I lightly dusted in the eyebrows and just continued building up the makeup on this first round, and I always like to start my highlights early and just build them up over time, like over several layers. I think it's just I don't know, I think overall it creates a cool effect, because I think it can be hard to build up highlights with powder. That's just my opinion. I know some people do it. I can't do it very well. I also go ahead and start sketching out her eye shape, and then I did sketch in her nose shape because I'm creating sort of a sheep's nose. I add some more details to the lips. I added some darker red up on the top and some more like red peach like vermilion color kind of on her bottom lip. I wanted that to look very highlighted, and I also dusted on some powder onto her lips. So at that point, I normally like to do all of my face ups with watercolor pencil, but I just wasn't getting the vibrancy of color that I wanted. So on this go around, I decided to be brave. I started using some paint, and I got the right consistency of adding water in, so it definitely helped me add some more details to her eyes. And I wanted to do green highlights for the eyes. I just kind of think it's boring when people kind of do like gold highlights, and sheep eyes kind of have like gradation of color in them, so I just thought this cool like green color would look really nice. And I also used paint to help the lashes and nose be a little bit sharper. I also added some subtle freckles just on her nose to sort of look more like a sheep's nose, and I of course added some gloss to the lips and eyes. I really wanted the eyes to be bright and just like bulging. My face ups are still not quite at the level that I want to be, but I definitely did much better on this doll than I have before. I needed to boil wash her bangs, but of course I did not want to get this doll wet, so I went ahead and just covered her with a Ziploc bag and tried to just lower her bangs from the steam, and go ahead and just put her hair up in the ponytail, and it looks super pretty. So now at this point, because she's a lamb, I just really wanted to do something fun, so I made her a balaclava. I started off by crocheting the neck piece, trying to make it ribbed, and then instead of just sewing it together and closing off and doing it on the round, I went ahead and just built up from there because I'd realized with the ears it was really going to be like impossible to have a balaclava that would just like pull on and off overhead. So I made gap room for the ears, and once I was satisfied with the fit of that, I just went ahead and built that into the pattern. This was a much better alternative anyway because I really wanted this balaclava to be removable and not permanently stuck onto the doll, so having it kind of open and putting on closures at the end was definitely the best possible way to do that. Eventually it was time to stop building height and start closing off the balaclava, so I went ahead and made a chain to connect the two ends and close it off by doing decreased stitches on the round. Once it's completely closed on the top, I can go ahead and weave in my ends, and I sew on a pretty lace trim onto the collar. I sew on hooks and eyes since they're much less bulkier than snaps for closures, and I go ahead and wrap up her hair and put it inside the balaclava. I didn't think the closures would be so visible, so to hide these hooks and eyes, I went ahead and made an extra flap and sewed on a hook that would attach to the yarn and pull it across to hide those bulky closures. And it's time to finally place the doll all together. I forgot to mention before, but the Craftsman Steady Crafting has an amazing video on how to use Apoxie Sculpt that definitely helped me out, and of course Doll Lightfully has many great videos for using Apoxie Sculpt for body modifications, so I'll place the link to their channels in the description box. Thank you so much for watching this video. I have many more doll customs planned that I can't wait to share. Please hit like and subscribe if you enjoy seeing my work, and let me know in the comments what type of videos you would like to see on this channel. I'll see you next time. Happy spring!